Good afternoon, Scott Redler, T3 Live. Welcome to today's recap. It is Wednesday, another day down. So today futures opened up, I think like 12 to 15 handles, really out of nowhere. Europe was strong. We've been following their lead somewhat. We've been talking about the leadership role that it seems like the DAX has taken again, and without China imploding, there you go. First hour was strong, and then all of a sudden, boom, markets faded, but kind of hung around. If you take a quick look at the chart of the SPX, we've been talking about this big channel, right? Here's the low end of the channel. Here is your high end of the channel. The bulls are pointing to a low, a higher low, another higher low. Bears are basically saying, we still haven't resolved as this, wedge gets put into place before finally, making some kind of resolution. I truly think that the market wants liftoff in September, so weaker economic news that gets a boost is not what people want. I think people want good news, but we'll see. The problem is, or the funny thing is you look at the spiders, okay? Spiders, closed yesterday like this, so really not giving you much clues to be long, and then gapped up and waited a while before filling the gap. Like if you look at this chart, this is why there are some people frustrated in the tape. You had your first gap up, and then pretty much the market held strong above 211 till almost 11:45. So if you weren't long into this gap up, you basically said, okay, I got to get involved in some things, otherwise I'm going to miss. If you happen to have shorted this first move, you probably got stopped out as we took out, the 210.55, and then all of a sudden, boom, you had your rollover with not much of a bounce, during that whole phase. And then here, guess you held a portion of the gap, rallied back up, and then closed, relatively in the middle of the range. So what does it mean? It doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot. It means that we're still in a range, and now you have another range. At least this inside range, I guess, is tighter, where you have more points of reference to look at. You have right here and right there, so hopefully it constricts, so then at some point we'll figure out and have a little lead time if it were to get above this or get below this to retest this area. So with that being said, though, the real action has been in the stocks, and Netflix has been best in breed, and finally, not even finally, just continued. And then today there was actually a cute short trade, and I did it with Mikey. We were both on the radio. Wasn't my type of trade, but it was extended and it was worth a look, and you could have made a little cute cash flow. So now people are pointing to this big topping tail in Netflix, which, there is one there. There's definitely a topping tail. I didn't go home short it just because I don't like to be short Netflix ever, really. This was your buyable breakout above the descending channel, little follow through, nice bull flag, continuation, and then very extended from the 8-day. If you look at the 5-minute, really, it wasn't an easy short. Me and Mikey started shorting probably around 128, and then, there was a little divergence with the futures. As if you look at the top of this bar, this was, what is that? That's 935. Okay, let's look at this bar. The top of this was 940. So 940, Netflix made a lower high. If you go to the spiders, at 940. Was right where? Right around, let's see the time here. You can see this was 10 o'clock. This is 9:40. Okay, it still continued higher. So you had the spiders continue higher, and then Netflix didn't lead it and gave you a little divergence. So, all in all, there was a small, $2 trade, and then you had one more move here when it broke below this little spot, and, at this area, 124 from 128 was a $4 move. Then I guess it wedged again, and boom. But overall, the money's been made to the long side. Today, it was worth a cute little short trade, and that was that divergence. Where I made my money this morning was in Apple. Apple has, been down 6 days, trying to get a bounce. It was definitely weaker, fell out of the channel, broke its bear flag 122 continuation pattern. Filled the gap yesterday on heavy volume, so I figured on a downgrade, a little late Merrill Lynch, it was worth a try. So with that being said, I don't know if it's going to start a new trend. We have to see, how weak it really is. Okay, this is when it broke your 122, and that was after having an unfilled gap after earnings below the moving averages. So all you had today is here was your basic gap fill, and then you had a red dog reversal today. And if you were prepared with yesterday's low, which was 113.25, that was all you needed for the action of today. So, you know, if you follow me on Twitter, if you're in my Redler All Access note, you know that, you know, at the bottom after my 20 ideas, I write down a focus. My focus was, how is Apple going to handle 113.25? If you bought stock yesterday at 115 or 114, you probably said to yourself, oh my goodness, I'm going to give it to yesterday's low, because if it goes below that, it can go to 111, it can go to 110, it can go to 107. You have no idea where Apple's going to go once it goes below a prior low. So right there, some people who may have bought the dip yesterday said, oh, I got to get out of the way. I'm trying to tell you how a red dog reversal works. Then you have guys who say, you know what, everyone's saying 105, 107, I'm going to press, you know, below 113.25. So then they press it. So in the first 15 minutes of the day, trades below that pivot, people get stopped out, people late to the party edge short, and then when it reverses, all of a sudden shorts have to cover, longs want to buy back. You have a pivot, which is the low of today versus yesterday's low. After $15 to $17 to the downside, $1.10 was the risk. And that's why it's such a prudent area. So you go back to the chart, you know, here was the low, which was 113.25, hit a low of 112.10. So $1.15 was your risk if you bought it when it went back above 113.25 for something that just fell from 127. So $15, you know, for an oversold bounce. And then we'll see, you know, what today leads to. Okay, so for those of you who want to see how fast it happened on the 5-minute, it happened pretty damn fast. So you had to be prepared. So, you know, the reason why, you know, it happened so fast is here's where people got stopped out below the low. Quick move. Okay, and then look how fast it actually went back above 113. So that right there, that showed you that there was some demand. And then you could have bought above 113.25 and made yourself a quick move back into yesterday's range. And that was fast money. By 10 o'clock, you could have made really good money. Then what happened? It held, put a little bit of a bull flag at the top of the range, and gave you another move back towards the highs of 117.44. Then we all talked about getting a little lighter because figured that there would be some resistance, you know, into yesterday's high. So this is your 2-day range. You could have easily mapped out 117.50 to 119.50. So that's where that was. So you could have sold into that, said, I'm going to figure out what's next. Then it broke a level, kind of shook the tree, and closed fair. So I am long a little Apple overnight. I don't love the trade. It is ex-dividend tomorrow, so you might be down just for that alone. And we'll see if it wants to retest the 200-day this time around. So in my head, I'm thinking maybe, you know, another day or so, perhaps it comes up to there. It's either going to fall short of 119.50, where all the bears are going to try and re-short it, or maybe it pushes the envelope a little bit higher towards where it broke down from a 122. So this would be like, you know, this is your pivot, and then here is resistance 1, very important, and here is, you know, resistance 2. At this point, it fell out of the channel. Now it's good, though. At least it's trading. You could have made money short and you could have made money long, and now we'll see what happens here in this playground. If it opens down tomorrow, maybe it's a buy. If it opens up tomorrow, you know, people might try and fade it versus, so we'll see what happens. As far as other high beta names, Google finally broke above its 668. If you were prepared, you had a nice trade. It just started to, you know, inch up above this, and, you know, there you go. Very tricky into this spot. But gave you a nice move back to resistance 1, and now we'll see if there's any follow through or not. It pulled a little bit off the highs. It hit, you know, 679, closed around 673. So, you know, if it wants to pack and fill, it wasn't a bad price to buy it towards, you know, with a little bit of a pullback. If Amazon wants to follow suit, it's kind of prepared to do so. If you're in a tier 1, I'm in a tier 1, thinking that perhaps if we have a little bit more strength, maybe it tries to clear this area. And I know I would probably be buying 540 or 542 for follow through, so might as well be a little bit in the hole buying here just in case. Look how fast Google went through that spot, which is where probably some people were short against, and that's why it's a pivot. You know, so boom, here was your first move through 666, through 668, gave you a quick move to as high as 678, so $7 through that level, pulled in, held the 8-day, and then gave you a nice follow through before, you know, correcting a bit and not closing on the highs, but still looks fair. So that's why you want to be prepared with levels ahead of time in order to jump on these areas that people get pushed around. If they're short, they got to cover. If you're looking for follow through, sometimes you get it, but that follow through has been, you know, far and few between. Fitbit, you know, seemed to have crushed the number. I don't know if it's if it's going to be able to continue to rally. It's been an enormous move. When I came in, it was up $5, so maybe it's above this. If you're trading this after hours, if it were to get back below 52, I would sell it. If it holds 52, who knows? You know, maybe it can continue. But overall, this has been a great, great stock for, you know, the VTF. You had a pivot there, a pivot here. Last Friday, had a nice pivot, and it closed strong. And now the question is, does it hold or not? We're still waiting for Tesla, which is later. At this point, it's kind of set up for whatever it wants to do. There was some kind of Fugazi report that came out of China, but who knows if it's real or not. If it's real, I guess people, you know, got a little scared. So anytime something happens like that, I get a little worried. But anyway, decent trade for some of you today. You know, the real pivot here after hours later will be if it could get and stay above this, you know, 283. If it does, you know, you could see a big time squeeze. A lot of people have been talking very bearish on car sales, on sales in China, and I think a lot more people are bearish and bullish on this. So if it does come out good and they have, you know, a good conference call, who knows, maybe it takes it out and you could trade it after hours. I did not take anything into it. As far as other stocks and other groups, you know, Disney gave you a quick bounce off of the level I spoke about at the morning call. The morning call I was talking about maybe buying it off of, you know, this 110. Gave you a quick move back up to retest this spot and then came off. So now we'll see, you know, how it bases in here to maybe fill that gap, you know, and then maybe even you get a red dog reversal around that 109.50. You know, you don't get much of a chance to buy Disney, you know, after a big pullback. So you need time, though, to let it work out. FSLR, what did you do on earnings? Nice gap and go. So we'll see if this stock could become relevant again. It's been irrelevant for a while. So now you could, you know, put, you know, your line above here. If it happens to keep this gap unopened for a little while, perhaps, you know, you get enough of a base to continue a little bit higher. The banks really didn't do much today. XLF tried to break out and didn't have much power. We'll see what happens, you know, as we get closer to the NFP. The ADP was a little light, so that's why the banks, I guess, didn't have the juice. But even with the ADP light, you know, I talked about selling the TLTs into the strength yesterday. You know, if you did so, you know, you're playing the range a little bit better. Here was your support. Here's when it triggered above its little pennant and gave you a move up, and now kind of holding in there. So we'll see what happens, you know, here. If it could hold against there, it has to hold this 120 to be any good. But if you sold yesterday or into the strength, you know, maybe if you play this, you know, you're looking at it here. But at this point, I'm not really doing much there at all. With all that said, there's, you know, a lot of very specific action today. You know, they gapped it up. I'm happy. At least they gave us a trade in Apple. You know, I was looking for that, and it worked out well. We actually sold it pretty well into that 117 and change. I did buy some back into the 115s that I'm in a little risk of, but we'll see. Oh, you know what was good? Facebook. Facebook was really good. Facebook, you know, had a really good earnings quarter. A lot of people said it wasn't enough, but they held it in there. It held above the pivot that we were talking about, gapped up. So now, you know, little work above this, and perhaps it takes this spot out, and then you'll see a move to highs. Overall, very strong today. In the game, above the 8 and 21 day. If you want a leader, and if this market wants to, you know, resolve higher, anyone that's shorted on that report saying it's not enough, it starts to get going. You know, they're going to get their, you know, Kajoni squeezed. So we'll see. I did, you know, come in flat that I was able to buy that pretty quickly. You know, on the 5-minute bar, you had a quick little move here. So this is, I think, when I got involved somewhere in here, and then it gave you a quick move, retraced a little bit, but all in all, you know, still looks good. We'll see what happens, how it opens tomorrow, if it opens back up into yesterday's high, or, you know, comes back into here where, you know, could probably buy a dip. And then keep making moves, keep those feet quick. It is August, where only have a few earnings reports left. You know, we have some economic numbers coming out where it's going to be important to see what the story is for liftoff. Again, I do think people want September liftoff. They want it. So weaker numbers that get a spike somewhere are going to be sold. Stronger numbers are probably going to be bought after maybe a little, you know, back and forth and temperamentalness, if that's a word. And we'll see you tomorrow. Hopefully, you know, you like Amelia. She's been filling in. Her accent is awesome. You know, it's good to have a little diversity. Brittany's out. She's expecting in September, and we're trying to just keep it interesting and keep you guys in tune and keep you prepared for the trading day ahead. Have a great night. See you tomorrow.